Her breath steamed in the cold air as she stood there, wrists raw and burning from rope, cheeks stinging where his hand had landed. No goodbye, no apology, just a grunt and the sound of hooves fading into the trees. She hadn't even gotten her boots. Snow bit into her bare feet like punishment, and still she didn't cry. Not yet. He'd told her it was her shame to carry. "You'll live with it, or die with it," he said, tossing her like a sack to a man she didn't know. A man who didn't say a word, just nodded at the cabin and turned his back like she was no more than the bundle of feet her father had tied beside her. June was 17, barely, a baby growing inside her, the weight of it pressing against her belly and her chest at the same time. She hadn't told anyone. Not before her father stormed into her room, dragged her out by the hair, and shoved her into the wagon without a word. The slap had come after she'd asked why. He hadn't liked that. And now here she was, in the middle of nowhere, traded like property. The cabin door creaked open when the wind pushed it. Warmth spilled out, firelight flickering on wooden floors, the smell of smoke and something cooked a while ago. She stepped inside because she had no choice. The wind shut the door behind her. He was already gone, back to the shed or the woods or wherever men like him disappeared to. She stood for a while, arms wrapped around her middle, afraid to sit, afraid to touch anything. Her feet ached. Her eyes burned. Still no tears. Her father never asked who the father was. Never gave her the chance to speak. Only said the preacher's boy had denied it. Called her a liar. A snake. Said she tried to trap a man of God. And that was that. The silence inside the cabin was louder than the woods. Every crack of firewood made her flinch. The cot in the corner looked rough, but dry. A shotgun hung above the mantel. Hooks lined the wall, some with furs, others with empty space that felt like it missed something. She didn't know how long she sat there before she heard boots crunching the snow again. Heavy steps up the porch. The door swung open, and there he was, broad-shouldered, face half hidden behind a beard and a wolf pelt. He didn't say anything, just looked at her once, then tossed 2 rabbits on the table and began skinning them with practiced hands. Blood hit the wood like it belonged there. Still no words. June stared. Finally, her voice cracked. "What's your name?" He didn't look up. "Rook." That was it. One word, flat as the blade he worked with. She tried again. "What do you want from me?" Still no eye contact. He gutted the rabbit with a single swipe. "Didn't ask for you." She felt the sting deep in her chest, but swallowed it. She'd cried enough in the wagon. Enough when the slap landed. Enough when she was yanked like trash through her own front door. That night, she laid down on the floor near the fire. He didn't offer the cot, and she didn't dare take it. Her hands curled around her belly. She could feel it now, not from hunger or fear, something fluttering inside. Small but alive. The only part of her that felt like hers. The next days passed quietly. Rook left before the sun and returned after it sank, always with something: meat, firewood, once even salt. He didn't speak unless necessary. Move, pot, cook this. He never touched her, never looked at her too long. June cleaned, not because he asked, but because it gave her hands something to do. The place was rough, but not filthy. He'd lived here a long time alone. She could feel it in the dustless table, the way everything had a place. Even if it wasn't welcoming, it was real. She wasn't used to firewood. Her father never let her near the hearth. Said it was her mother's job, and after she died, it stayed untouched, cold like the rest of that house. Here, June burned her knuckles twice before figuring out how to stir the pot without getting scorched. Still, she kept trying. It was the 5th morning when she woke to blood. Her hands flew to her dress, the red spreading fast, warm against her thighs. Her scream tore the silence in two. Rook burst in a second later, axe still in hand, snow melting on his shoulders. "I'm bleeding," she whispered. "It's too early. I don't know." He dropped the axe, came to her side, looked once, then scooped her up without a word. He didn't ask permission, just carried her to the cot and laid her down like she might shatter. June shook. "Please not the baby," she kept saying. "Please not the baby." He didn't speak. He built the fire higher, boiled water, brought every fur in the place, and piled it on her. Once, just once, She saw his hand tremble as he wrapped her legs. Hours passed. The bleeding slowed. The pain dulled. She didn't lose it. The life was still inside her. She could feel it again. Small, quiet, still hanging on. That night, Rook sat on the floor by the fire, back to the wall. June whispered, "You cared." He didn't blink. "Don't flatter yourself." But his voice cracked. Just a little. She didn't answer. Just laid there listening to the fire crackle, to the breath of the man who hadn't smiled once since she arrived, but had carried her like something worth saving. The days after that felt different. Still quiet, still cold, but not empty like before. June noticed small things. Another bowl placed next to his at dinner, even if he didn't say it was for her. A clean blanket folded near the fire. Her old boots, stitched neatly at the soles, fixed without her asking. He never pointed these things out, never said why, but she saw them. He noticed her, even when he acted like he didn't. He wasn't kind, not in a way you could name, but he wasn't cruel either. He never raised his voice, never raised his hand. That was more than she was used to. And yet, there was something about him that stayed guarded, like he kept the world an arm's length away and didn't know how to let it in. Then the storm came. It rolled down from the mountains without warning. 5 days of wind and snow. The porch disappeared. The windows frosted so thick she couldn't see out. The food got low. The silence stretched longer. They only spoke when they had to. "Hand me that. There's a leak. Eat this. It's warm." But on the third night, everything changed again. June had stepped outside to gather snow for water and slipped on the ice. She fell hard, her elbow hitting the wooden step with a crack. She bit her lip, but tears still came. Rook came out fast, his face tighter than usual. "What were you thinking?" "I needed snow." "You were asleep," she said, holding her arm. "I told you I'd get it." She flinched when he stepped toward her. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. A habit. Fear. He stopped. "Cold. I'm not your father," he said softly. She looked up, eyes wide. "You don't flinch like that unless someone taught you to." She didn't answer. "I won't hit you," he said, "even if you mouth off." Her throat tightened. "You're the first man who's ever said that to me." He didn't reply, just crouched and wrapped her arm, careful and quiet. That night, she didn't sleep on the floor. She sat on the cot. He didn't stop her. She cried, slow and silent. He didn't say anything, just stayed near his back to the fire like he understood. It was week 6 when the fever came. June woke in sweat, teeth shaking, everything spinning. She tried to call for him, but he was already there, pressing a hand to her forehead. He said nothing, just rushed out the door, saddled the mule, and rode into the storm. He was gone 2 days. When he returned, his lips were cracked, hands near frozen, but he brought herbs, cloth, something warm in a small flask. She drank it and slept. When she woke again, the fever had passed. He looked worse than she did, tired and pale. She whispered, "Why did you come back?" He blinked. "You could have let the fever finish me." He shook his head. "I'm not your father." That was all, but it was enough. Spring came late that year. The snow melted slow, the mud deep and heavy. Rook stayed out longer now, hunting, trapping, working more than usual. June watched him carefully. He didn't ask about the baby, didn't talk about it all, but she caught the way he looked when she moved too quickly or strained too high, the way his eyes dropped to her belly and stayed there for just a second too long. He noticed, even if he said nothing. One morning, she found warm bread near the hearth. Another day, he carved a small wooden bird and left it on the windowsill, wings stretched like it had just landed. He never said it was from him, but she knew. Still, he didn't speak of the baby, not until the dog came. It followed him home, skinny, limping, ribs sharp under its coat. Rook said nothing about it, just walked in, and the dog trailed behind like it had decided this was home. June sat by the fire and reached out. "Tinder," she said softly, petting its matted fur, because he caught quick to warmth. Rook didn't argue. He just kept sharpening his blade. But that night, when the wind howled and the dog whimpered, Rook got up and nudged another fur closer to the hearth. Said nothing, just made space. 3 days later, the dog wouldn't leave June's side. It curled beside her belly like it understood. "I guess he's decided who he belongs to," she said, scratching its ears. Rook didn't reply, but a ghost of a smile touched his face. That evening something shifted. It wasn't loud, just quiet enough to matter. Rook stood by the window after dinner, arms crossed. June sat on the cot, rubbing her back. The baby kicked hard, more than before, like it felt the change too. Then he spoke. "How far along are you?" She blinked. He never asked questions like that. 6 months, she said softly. "Give or take?" He nodded. Didn't sit. Just stared out at the trees. "Is the father gone?" Her throat tightened. "He wasn't a father. Not really. The preacher's son. Said he'd marry me. Said he loved me." Rook stayed quiet. "We met behind the school every Thursday after choir," she said, voice shaking. "I thought it meant something. I thought I did. But when I told him, he told his father I was trying to trap him." She looked away. "You know what my father did?" Rook's jaw clenched. "He gave me away," she said bitterly. "Like a goat. A pregnant one." "I'm sorry," Rook said quietly. "For what?" "For how they treated you." He didn't say it like he wanted to fix it. He said it like he knew he couldn't. She stared at him. "Then why did you take me?" He looked down. "I owed your father." That stung. Her voice broke. "So he gave you a girl in return." "I didn't know," Rook said. "He said he had someone who needed a place. Said she was difficult. I didn't ask. Figured I'd get another hand for cooking. Then I saw your face." He paused. "That wasn't difficult. That was abandoned." Silence filled the room again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It was heavy, honest. That night, she dreamed of rivers and cold water, and someone pulling her out before she drowned. The baby came early. It started with cramps, sharp and low. June tried to stay quiet, biting her lip to keep from crying out. She didn't want to wake Rook. But her water broke before the sun rose, and her body gave her no choice. Rook was at her side in seconds. No panic, no shouting. Just action. He built the fire higher, boiled water, laid out towels, cleared the floor. His hands moved steady, like he'd done this before, though she knew he hadn't. The pain was like a storm. It came in waves, and each one stronger than the last. She screamed into the floorboards, fingers gripping whatever they could. Rook stayed close, holding her hand, letting her crush his fingers without a word. His voice stayed low and calm. "Almost there. You're strong. He's almost here." June let out a shaky laugh between the pain. "How do you know it's a boy?" "I don't," he said. "Just feels like one." But when the baby came, red and howling, it wasn't a boy. It was a girl. Tiny, perfect, with dark hair and fists that curled like she was ready to fight the world. June cried then, not from pain, but from something deeper, something that cracked open and made space for joy. Rook cut the cord, wrapped the baby in a soft cloth, held her for 1 second longer than needed, then gave her to June like she was made of light. "What will you name her?" he asked quietly. June looked down at the tiny face. "Hope." He nodded. "She's everything I didn't think I'd ever get to have." She looked up. "And I wouldn't have her without you." "You'd have survived," he said. "No," she whispered. "Not like this." He didn't argue. But that night, after she fell asleep holding Hope against her chest, Rook dragged the cot closer to the fire, pulled up a second chair, sat beside them. He didn't speak, just listened to the wind outside, the baby's breathing, and the quiet that now felt like home. 3 days later, someone knocked on the door. It was a soft knock. 2 firm taps. Measured. Rook was sharpening his blade. June was swaddling Hope. Both froze. "Who would come this far?" she whispered. Rook stood and opened the door slowly. A boy stood there, maybe 15 or 16. Thin, mud on his boots, holding his hat in both hands. "Sir," he said. "You work?" "Yes." The boy's voice cracked. "You got a girl here named June?" Rook's hand twitched near the doorframe. "Who's asking?" The boy swallowed. "I'm her brother." June stood so fast the chair fell over. "What?" He looked up. His eyes widened when he saw her. "June!" "They said you were dead." Her breath left her chest. She stepped into the cold, barefoot, holding Hope. I don't understand." He stepped closer. "Father told the town you ran off. Said you shamed us. That you were probably in the river by now. But then Mama got sick. She told me the truth. She told me where he took you." Rook's eyes narrowed. "Why come now?" The boy looked down. "'Cause Pa's gone. Disappeared after the sheriff started asking about the preacher's son and some hush money. People in town are asking questions now. And Mama, she said to find you. Said to bring you home if I could. June's eyes filled with tears. Home. She looked at Hope, then at Rook. Her voice came soft. I already am. That night, the boy, his name was Seth, curled near the fire, coat over his shoulders, boots off, too scared to ask for a bed, too tired to care. June didn't press him. Rook didn't either. The quiet returned, but this time it had a new weight. A brother. A memory. A question. June lay on the cot, with Hope against her chest, watching her baby breathe like a second heartbeat. She looked at Seth across the room. Thin, torn coat, dirt under his nails. He'd come alone, walking through snow that hadn't fully melted. For her, she couldn't imagine going back. Not to that house. Not to the town. Not to the shame they buried her in. She had hope now. She had peace. She had Rook. And yet, she didn't know where she stood with him. Rook hadn't said much since the boy arrived. Went back to chopping wood, cleaning his traps. But something in his shoulders looked tight, something in his silence more guarded than before. He didn't ask what she would do. He didn't need to. The choice followed her like a shadow. Could she return? Could she face the town that threw her out? What if it had changed? What if it hadn't? And what about Rook? The man who had wrapped her in furs, brought her through fever, carved tiny animals, and left them on the windowsill without a word. The man who didn't smile but stayed. She found a half-finished cradle behind the cabin. Made of pine. Sturdy. Patient. He hadn't told her about it, but she saw his work in every carved line. That morning, Seth woke first, rubbing his eyes like he still wasn't sure this was real. He sat stiff at the table while June boiled oats, Hope twitching in newborn sleep against her chest. Mama's sick, Seth said. June turned slowly. What kind of sick? Her lungs, he said. She's coughing up dark stuff. They say she won't last till summer unless she gets help. June paused. And you came here alone? He nodded. Didn't have no choice. We ain't got money for doctors. And Mama kept saying she had to see you. Said she needed to ask forgiveness. June sat down, hands shaking. Her heart beat like a drum. She felt the anger rise, sharp, fast. But it didn't explode. It sat heavy instead. Why didn't she stop him? She whispered. When he beat me. When he gave me away like livestock. She tried, Seth said. I swear she did. But he told her if she ever opened her mouth, he'd send her off like he did you. And Mama, she ain't strong like you. June looked away. I wasn't strong, she said. I just got lucky. No, Seth said softly. You got out. Rook stepped in then, snow on his coat, arms full of kindling. He said nothing, just knelt near the fire. June looked at him. Did you hear? He nodded once. She studied him. There was something behind his eyes. Not anger, not pity, just distance, like a wall built stone by stone a long time ago. I don't know what to do, she said. You don't have to decide now, he replied. But she did, because deep down, she knew something had changed. She wasn't just a girl who'd been thrown away anymore. She was a mother, and mothers didn't run. That night, she packed a small bag, just enough clothes for a few days. Rook didn't say much as he watched her wrap Hope in soft blankets. He stood near the door, silent, like he was waiting for something he couldn't name. Seth had already saddled one of the mules. The journey back would take a full day if they moved fast. Maybe more with a newborn. I won't stay long, June said softly, not meeting Rook's eyes. Just long enough to see her. Long enough to know the truth. Rook nodded. You need anything? She took a step closer. I know. There was silence between them, but it wasn't cold. It held something weighty. Something unfinished. And then, as she turned to leave, he said, You come back. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a plea. It was a promise. She squeezed his hand. I will. The road was worse than she remembered. Frozen ruts, sharp turns. The mules struggled under the weight of them. June walked when she could, clutching Hope close inside Rook's oversized coat, her breath fogging in the cold air. They reached the town on the second morning, just as the sky began to turn gold with the rising sun. It looked the same, the smell of smoke, horses, old wood. But the way people looked at her had changed. No longer with hate or shame. This time, they looked afraid. Maybe it was the baby in her arms. Maybe it was the fact that she had returned at all. No one spoke, but no one stopped her either. The doctor confirmed what Seth had said. Her mother was dying, lungs failing, fever high. Days left. maybe a week. They found her curled in a small bed, skin pale, body weak, eyes sunken. When June stepped inside, the woman tried to sit up but couldn't. "June," she rasped. "My baby." June sat beside her and gently placed Hope in her arms. For a while, they just stared at each other. "I'm sorry," her mother whispered. "I should have protected you." June blinked back the sting in her eyes. "You should have." "I know." Nothing more was said. But in that moment, something shifted. Forgiveness didn't crash in like a wave. It came slow, like a breath. June stayed 3 days, just long enough to sit by her mother's side when she passed. Just long enough to watch the sheriff put the preacher's son in cuffs after Seth, brave, steady, told everything he knew. And just long enough to hear that her father had disappeared, left one night with nothing but a saddlebag and silence. No one went looking for him. When June stepped out of that house for the last time, Hope in her arms and Seth at her side, she felt like something had ended. Something heavy. Seth looked up at her. "What now?" She looked toward the hills. "I go home." He hesitated. "Can I come?" She studied him. So young, so worn, so much like her. "Only if you're ready to work," she said. He smiled. "Always." They returned 3 days later. The trail back up was harder, steeper, but June didn't feel it. Not the ache in her feet, not the cold on her face. It was all worth it. And when the cabin came into view, smoke curling from the chimney, she felt her heart twist. Rook was standing on the porch, waiting. He stepped forward as she dismounted, eyes flicking from her to Seth, then to the bundle in her arms. "You came back," he said. "I told you I would." Without thinking, she pressed the baby into his arms. Hope blinked up at him, tiny fist twitching. "She's heavier now," he murmured. "She eats like her mother," June said, laughing. And just like that, the 3 of them stepped inside. The cabin wasn't just a shelter anymore. It was a home, and not the kind you're born into, the kind you build piece by piece with pain, kindness, and slow, careful hands. It had only ever known silence before. Now it knew life. Hope's cries in the early morning. Seth's laughter when he dropped a pot. The creak of the floor when Rook moved past them without a word, but always left something behind. Warmth, food, safety. June felt grief sometimes. It snuck in like wind through the cracks. In the cupboard, when she saw her mother's old jar. In the way Seth coughed after sleeping near the door. In the way Rook stared at the fire for too long, hand resting on the cradle he had finished carving. But she didn't fear the grief anymore. It meant something had mattered. They built a rhythm. Not perfect, not easy, but theirs. Seth worked hard. He wanted to be useful. He chopped wood, checked traps, followed Rook like a shadow, never asking for praise. June cooked, cleaned, sewed, and held Hope close every moment she could. She often caught herself smiling. Real smiles, not the kind you force to survive. Rook didn't say much, but June saw the difference. He corrected Seth gently, brought home an extra rabbit without a word, carved a wooden horse, and left it at the edge of Seth's bed. He didn't need to be thanked. He was learning to care, in his own way. One night, the wind roared against the windows. Snow thickened. The fire burned low. Hope was curled against June, wrapped in quilts. Seth had dragged his blanket near the fire. Rook sat at the table, sharpening his knife, but his eyes kept drifting to her. "You used to be alone up here," June said softly. He didn't look up. "Still am sometimes." She nodded. "We're not going anywhere." "I know," he said, "but I don't always believe it." He stopped sharpening. "You ever try to save someone who didn't want saving?" he asked. She thought of her mother, her father, herself. "Yes," she said. "It don't work." "No," she whispered. "But sometimes you try anyway." Hope stirred in her arms. June kissed her tiny forehead. "Do you think she'll forgive me?" she asked. "For bringing her into a world like this?" Rook stood slowly, crossed the room, knelt beside her. His hand brushed over Hope's head, gentle as breath. "She already has," he whispered. Outside, the storm howled, but inside, nothing could touch them. Spring came like a slow breath. The ice melted one patch at a time, brown earth peeking through the white. Trees stayed bare a while longer, unsure if it was safe to bloom. But inside the cabin, life was already moving. Hope kicked her little legs stronger each day. Seth ran ahead on trails, laughing louder than ever before. June stood in the doorway, watching them, her arms crossed over her shawl. Rook sat on the porch rail, arms folded, a small smile hiding in his beard. But the thaw brought more than sunlight. It brought noise. Gunfire in the far woods. A lone rider spotted too close to the cabin path. Rook's shoulders stiffened each time, like an old hound catching a scent. He didn't speak about it, but June saw it in his face. Something was coming. Then, one day, a knock at the door. Midday. Quiet. Calm. June was inside feeding hope. Seth was gathering kindling out back. Rook opened the door and stood face to face with a man neither of them knew. Long coat. Rifle slung across his back. A badge on his chest. Name's Bram, he said. U.S. Marshal. Came from 2 towns over. Rook didn't answer. Just stood still. I'm looking for a girl named June. June stepped out slowly, holding Hope close. Why? Bram blinked, surprised. Didn't expect you to answer the door. Thought maybe you ran. I'm done running. He nodded. Good. 'Cause there's trouble. The preacher's boy didn't take well to being arrested. His father's stirring things up. Some folks want blood. They blame you. June didn't flinch. They blamed me once already. Rook's hand twitched near the doorframe. Not his gun. Not yet. But the tension in him rose like heat from a stove. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing, Bram said. Just came to warn you. And to tell you something else. Your brother, the younger one, he's speaking out. Telling people what your father did. June blinked. People are listening, Bram added. Your brother, he's not a boy anymore. He's fighting like a man. She didn't know what to say. Her chest tightened, pride and fear fighting inside her. Town might come for you, Bram said. Or it might not. But if it does, you ought to be ready. He tipped his hat, turned, and rode off. That night, silence sat heavier than snow. Rook stood by the door longer than usual. One hand resting on the frame, the other near his rifle. Seth stayed close. He didn't talk much, but his eyes were sharper now. Do you think they'll come? June asked softly. Rook didn't lie. Maybe. And if they do, he looked at her. They won't get through me. 2 nights later, it started. Seth saw them first, 3 figures at the edge of the trees. Moving quiet. Slow. They thought they weren't seen. June rushed Hope in her cradle, whispering soft prayers. Rook grabbed the rifle from above the mantel. They won't stop at threats, he said. We don't have to stay, June said. We can run. No, he said, voice firm. They need to know you're not prey anymore. She stared at him, her hands shaking. Then I'm standing with you. He nodded once. Get Seth inside. Keep the babies safe. But Seth didn't move. He stood in the doorway, holding a thick branch like a sword. His eyes fierce. I'm not hiding. Rook stepped forward and crouched to his level. You're brave, he said. But brave men know when to protect others. Your sister needs you. That baby needs you. Seth bit his lip, then nodded. Step back inside. The first shot came low, cracking the snow. Rook dropped to one knee and returned fire, calm, steady. June ducked behind a porch beam, clutching the pistol Rook had given her weeks ago. One man broke cover. Rook hit him in the leg. The others froze, confused. They hadn't expected resistance. Then a 4th figure stepped out. Taller. Older. The preacher. June's breath caught in her throat. I came to speak, he called. You brought guns to talk. Rook growled, rifle steady. You shamed our town, the preacher barked. That girl led others into sin. She led no one, Rook said. She survived you. That child she carries, the preacher spat, is filth. Rook didn't blink. Then why are you the one standing in the mud? The preacher's face turned red with rage. You'll regret protecting her. Before he could take another step, another voice rang out. Leave them alone. It was Seth. He had climbed a tree near the back. Now he stood tall on a low branch, his voice strong. She's my sister. That baby's family. You want them. You go through me too? The preacher hesitated. His men looked at him, unsure. Then came a sound of hooves, another rider. Bram. The marshal sat on his horse behind the preacher's men, rifle ready. This ends here, Bram said, or it ends with rope. The preacher froze, then turned, and disappeared into the trees. When the fire settled and the cabin was safe again, June sat beside Rook on the floor. Her hand found his. "You stayed," she whispered. "I told you I would." She looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had once said nothing, who now stood in front of guns for her. And in her heart, she knew, he wasn't just the man who saved her. He was the one who'd never let her fall again. The woods were different after that night. Not quieter, not yet, but more awake. Like the trees were watching. Like the wind carried news of what had happened, of how it ended. And maybe, just maybe, of how it could have gone worse. Inside the cabin, time slowed. Not with fear, but with something heavier. Something that felt like waiting to see if peace would hold. Waiting to breathe without flinching. Hope learned to stand that week. Wobbly, her arms waving for balance, her legs like soft sticks. June cried watching her, not from sadness, but from something stronger. A feeling she couldn't name. "I thought she'd grow up in fear," she whispered one night, sitting by the fire. "She'll grow up free," Rook said, not looking up from the blade he was sharpening. They didn't go back to town. They didn't have to. News came to them now, brought by Bram, by whispers, by letters. The preacher's men had been arrested. The preacher himself had vanished. June didn't ask where. Rook didn't say. But the peace that followed wasn't weak. It was earned. Hope's laughter filled the cabin. Seth grew taller, steadier. He spent hours beside Rook in the woods, learning the traps, tracking prints, skinning rabbits. He didn't talk much out there, but June saw the difference when he came home. The way he stood straighter, smiled easier. Rook changed too, though not in loud ways. June noticed it in his hands. How they moved slower now, gentler. How he carved animals for Hope without waiting to be asked. Tiny foxes, birds, a bear once with mismatched ears. Hope lined them up like soldiers across the mantel. And June, she learned how to breathe again. Real breaths. Deep ones. The kind that didn't carry fear or weight. One day a letter came. Not by horse. Not handed over. It crashed through the window, tied to a rock. The glass shattered. June grabbed Hope. Seth jumped to his feet, heart pounding. Rook was already at the window, rifle in one hand, lifting the rock with the other. A note was wrapped around it. He read it silently, then passed it to June. The handwriting was sharp, angry. "The child is an abomination. The mother's sin remains. He who shelters them will pay. We haven't forgotten. We're coming." June folded the note, calm. Her hands didn't shake. "They still think we'll run," she said. Rook looked at her. "They might not be wrong." She met his eyes. "Not because we're weak." He nodded. "No, because we got something to lose now." That night they made a plan. No long talks. No speeches. Just action. Rook doubled the traps along the tree line. He showed Seth how to make snares that tripped men instead of catching animals. June boiled jars of soup, packed them tight, buried them in the root cellar they'd dug by hand. They didn't know when the next attack would come, only that it would. One morning, Rook came back from a north trail, bleeding from the shoulder. June ran to him, tore open his sleeve. "What happened?" "Trap," he said. His voice was low. "Wasn't mine. Someone had set it. For him." Seth helped clean the wound, jaw tight, silent. But what scared June wasn't Rook's pain. It was Seth's quiet. He didn't cry, didn't ask questions, just kept working. Hope sat nearby, chewing on a cloth, her eyes wide, watching everything. Too young to understand, but somehow too aware to miss it. That night, June said what they were all thinking. "We can't let them choose the hour." Rook sat by the fire, shoulder bandaged, hands still. "They want us to strike first," he said. "That's how cowards work." She looked at him. "Then we need to decide what we are. Are we prey?" He didn't answer. The next morning, June left Hope with Seth and climbed the high ridge with Rook. From there, the whole valley stretched out, quiet and still. But smoke curled in the distance. A camp near the river. Close enough to matter. "They're waiting," she said. He nodded. "They want a reckoning." "Then let's give them one." He turned to her. She didn't flinch. And just like that, they knew. The fight didn't come like thunder. No torches. No shouts. It came with silence. A twig snapping. 3 men moved through the woods, stepping slow. One with a rope. One with a rifle. One carrying a sack that clinked like bottles, kerosene. They didn't know Rook had been waiting since before dawn. Didn't know Seth had set traps behind them. Didn't know June had climbed a tree, pistol tucked at her waist, knife in her boot. The first man tripped the snare, hit the dirt, wind knocked from his chest. Seth was there in seconds, stick held like a sword. "Don't move," the boy said. The man didn't. The second raised his rifle. Too slow. Rook stepped from the trees, gun steady. "Drop it." He did. The third tried to run. June dropped from the tree, boots first. Caught his leg. He fell. She stood over him, pistol aimed between his eyes. "You came for a baby," she said. "Now you answer for it." They tied the men. Checked their bags. Bottles. Rags. Matches. They had come to burn the cabin, with hope inside. That was the line. Bram arrived the next day. One look at the scene, and he nodded. "We'll take them in." Rook narrowed his eyes. "You knew they were coming." "I heard whispers," Bram said. "Took time to follow. They wanted to kill a child," June said. "And you stopped them," Bram replied. "That matters." The trial didn't make noise, but the town heard it anyway. The preacher's men were arrested. The preacher vanished again. No one looked. June didn't smile. Rook didn't either. But something settled that week. Hope took her first steps across the cabin floor, wobbly and wild, giggling loud. June wept again, for everything they had held on to, and everything they hadn't lost. "She'll grow up free," she said again. Rook stood beside her. And safe. They didn't return to town. They didn't need to. Word came up the mountain like wind, soft but sure. Women whispered about June, about what had been done to her. Men started questioning the silence they'd held for so long. Something was changing. Slowly, but it was real. Seth stayed through the summer. Then through the fall. Then, without needing to say it, he stayed for good. He was growing into himself, quieter, sharper, more watchful. And one day, when the air warmed again and wildflowers returned to the edges of the trail, Rook handed June something he'd carved from walnut wood. A ring. Simple. Smooth. Strong. "I never thought I'd ask," he said. "But I can't not." June smiled and slipped it on her finger. "You already did, Rook." The seasons turned like pages, spring into summer, summer into fall. The colors deepened, soft golds and thick greens giving way to rust reds. And for once, life didn't feel like a fight for every breath. But June never forgot what it took to reach this place. Peace had come, but it had been earned in blood, in fire, in choice. The mountain didn't belong to them. Not really. It was older than all of them. But it had taken them in, sheltered them when no one else would. The cabin stood stronger than ever. Rook had sealed the leaks, built new shelves, carved a window frame from pine, and found a piece of glass to fit. Now, when the sun came through in the morning, it lit the floor with a soft glow that touched Hope's little toes as she toddled barefoot. She was growing fast, wild and stubborn, with Rook's frown and June's steady eyes. She laughed often, but trusted slowly. She liked bugs, birds, and sitting for long stretches just watching ants march across tree bark. She wasn't afraid of the woods. She belonged to them. Rook carved animals for her, little bears, foxes, wolves. She lined them up on the mantel like her own quiet army. June, meanwhile, found something unexpected in herself. Calm. For the first time, she didn't carry guilt like a second skin. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. Sometimes she caught her reflection in the basin and didn't recognize the face staring back. Fuller, warmer, no longer hollow with fear. Rook changed too. Not weaker, just softer at the edges. He still moved like stone, slow and steady, but now his silence wasn't heavy. He sat beside Seth and answered the boy's endless questions without snapping. He brushed Hope's fingers with care, let her fall asleep in his lap without shifting away. He didn't say, "I love you." He didn't need to. The ring he made stayed on June's hand every day. No gold, no polish, just the wood from the mountain that saved them. One afternoon, just after sunset, Rook stood in the doorway, staring at the horizon. June joined him. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't speak right away. "Used to think there was nothing left for me," he said at last. "That I was just waiting to vanish into this mountain." She didn't say anything. She knew not to interrupt when he spoke like that. "But now," he went on, "eyes still on the far ridge. I think I was being shaped, like the wood I use for carving. Cut down, hollowed out, not useless, but waiting to be made into something." June rested a hand on his arm. "You weren't shaped to carry nothing, Rook. You were shaped to carry us. That night, he held her close. Their breath rose together beneath the fur blanket, steady and quiet. Neither said a word. They didn't need to. Winter came slower this time. Birds flew lower. Nights chilled earlier. But they were ready. June gathered herbs, dried food, packed preserves. Rook set new traps. Seth practiced splitting wood, his hands stronger now, more careful. There was no panic, only preparation. But near the end of October, a rider appeared. It had been months since a stranger came that far up the mountain. June saw him first, riding slow, back straight, coat dark and neat. Too disciplined for a traveler. Her heart pounded, not in fear but instinct. She slipped back to the cabin and found Rook sanding the porch rail. One look at her face, and he stood. "Stranger," she whispered. "Looks like law." He handed the sander to Seth and went for his rifle. June picked up Hope and stepped inside. 15 minutes later, the man dismounted near the porch. He removed his hat. His hair was graying blonde, his face lined, not with cruelty, but long, tired judgment. "My name's Sheriff Bernard Lyle," he said. "I don't mean trouble." June stepped out slowly. Trouble never says it means trouble. Rook stood behind her. "I came because of the trial," the sheriff said. "The preacher never stood for his charges. He vanished. But we found his ledger, names, transactions." Rook stepped forward. "What kind of transactions?" The sheriff hesitated. "He sold girls to men outside the county. Some were bartered by family." June went cold. The sheriff swallowed. "There's a note about one girl, sent with her brother. It matches your story. That ledger makes your father complicit. We're preparing arrests." June's knees weakened. "You mean to tell me?" Rook growled. "I know it's late," the sheriff said, "but I came to do the right thing. I need her testimony." "No," June said instantly, voice sharp. "I'll protect you," the sheriff added. She stepped forward. "Where were you when I was marched up a mountain like cattle? When my father handed me off like I didn't matter? I didn't know. But you do now." She turned to Rook. He hadn't moved. "She deserves her peace," he said. "She's earned it." The sheriff nodded. "If she comes to town, she can help stop this from happening to another girl." He left the papers on the table and rode off. No threats, no demands, just silence. That night, June didn't speak for hours. Hope slept curled against her. Seth watched her from across the room, eyes wide with understanding. "Do you want to go?" Rook asked gently. "I don't know," she whispered. "I want to help, but I'm scared. Scared I'll see him again. Scared I'll become that girl again." "You won't," he said. "You couldn't if you tried." She looked at him. "Who am I then?" "Someone braver than me," he said. "And I've seen war." 3 days later, she left. Not alone. Rook rode with her. Seth stayed behind to watch Hope, steady with a shotgun across his lap. Bram met them halfway and led them into town. The courthouse was small, but full. Other girls were there. Older, younger, all with names once scribbled in that book. June stood. She told her story. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She spoke clearly. About the night her father dragged her out. About how the preacher blessed it. About the cabin. About survival. And the man who helped her find freedom. The room didn't move at first. But by the end, there were tears. Some people stood. Some bowed their heads. The preacher was wanted across 3 states. Her father was arrested. No one stood up to defend him. June returned home changed. Not broken. Not undone. Just whole. She kissed Hope's forehead that night. "Your mama did what she had to." And Rook, standing behind her, whispered, "And now you never have to again." The mountain air felt different now. Sharper. Cleaner. Like something had shifted in the soil. Not just the weather, but the weight of everything they had carried. June walked slower these days, not because her body had grown weak, but because she finally had the freedom to take her time. She'd stopped rushing through moments she once thought she'd never survive. Hope ran ahead through fallen leaves, her little boots kicking gold and red into the sky. Her laughter echoed across the trees, bright and full. Seth walked behind her, no longer the thin boy who'd knocked on their door, but a young man. Strong, steady. He didn't have to be asked to watch her. He just did. June stood in the cabin's doorway, wrapped in a wool shawl, eyes soft as she watched her children. Because that's what they were now. Not blood, maybe, but hers. All the same, the cabin wasn't just a place anymore. It was a story, a shield, a home, built from scratch and scar and slow forgiveness. It had heard their cries, their silence, their joy. It had stood through storms, through grief, through danger. And it still stood now, solid, warm, waiting. Inside, above the hearth, Rook had carved names into a wooden plank. June, Hope, Seth, Rook. Even Bram had one. The marshal who had never needed to be asked for help. That winter came earlier than most. The wind still howled some nights, but it no longer frightened them. They had faced worse. They had survived worse. Rook built a new cradle for Hope, with carved foxes and owls in the corners. June made a quilt with fingers that no longer trembled. Seth learned to trap, to skin, to make stew without burning it. Every small win felt like a victory. And June, she felt peace. Not all the time, but often enough. There were nights when the wind rattled the windows, and she still looked over her shoulder. But it wasn't fear anymore. It was memory, a reminder of what she came from, and how far she'd walked to leave it behind. Hope turned 2 in the spring. Bram rode up the trail with a carved wooden horse and a basket of peaches. June laughed as Hope dragged the toy behind her, screaming with joy. They made honey cakes. Seth played a crooked tune on a banjo Bram had fixed. And for once, June didn't cry at the joy. She didn't feel guilty for being happy. Later that night, she sat on the porch beside Rook, watching the stars. "You ever think," she whispered, "that all this came from something meant to break us?" Rook didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "Things only break you if you let them." "You didn't." "I almost did, but you didn't," he said. "That's what matters." She turned her head toward him. "What about you? What kept you going before me?" He looked into the trees. "Habit, maybe. Guilt. Then one day, there you were, dragged up here like punishment. But you weren't punishment. You were the thing that ended the silence." She touched his face. "You saved me." He shook his head. "We saved each other." That summer, word came that her father had died in prison. No ceremony, no marker, just a letter. June stood by the stream, read the words once, then let the wind carry them away. She didn't weep, didn't curse. She simply let it go. "That part of your story is over," Rook said that night. "It is," June answered. The years passed quietly after that. Hope grew fierce and curious. Seth left at 17 to work with Bram near the foothills, but returned every month with stories, supplies, and new laughter in his voice. He sent letters too, long ones. June kept them all in an old tin by the stove. Rook's beard grayed, his hair thinned, but his hands stayed strong. He moved slower, winced more in winter, but never stopped working. June teased him for it. He called her trouble, like he always had, and she smiled every time. They never left the mountain. Not for fairs, not for festivals. Their world was here, not because they were hiding, but because they had built something no one else could give them. And the path June once walked in chains, she now walked freely, with Hope skipping ahead, naming birds and trees with confidence. One fall morning, when leaves curled brown and the sky turned silver, June found Rook sitting at the table early. "You all right?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Had a dream. About your father." She waited. He stood at the edge of the ridge. Didn't say anything. Just looked at me. She said nothing, only sat beside him. "I think I forgave him," Rook said quietly. "Not because he earned it, but because I don't want him living in me anymore." June nodded. "You don't have to carry what he did." "I don't," he said. "I carry you. Hope. This cabin. That's enough." That winter, Rook fell ill. Slowly, a cough that never left. A tiredness that settled deep in his bones. He tried to pretend, splitting wood, sharpening tools, but June saw the weight on his shoulders. One night, when he couldn't sit up, she lay beside him, her head on his chest. "You gave me everything," she whispered. "No," he breathed. "You gave me purpose. I don't want you to go." "I won't," he said. "I'll be in the floorboards, in the trees, in that girl's laugh. You'll see me everywhere." And she did. Way past, it was quiet, gentle, no fear, just rest. They buried him beneath the spruce tree where he once carved rings. Seth came home and wept openly beside the grave. Hope didn't understand, not fully. But when she laid the fox carving on the dirt and whispered, "Pop is sleeping now," June knew she would remember him not as loss, but as love. Years later, Hope grew tall and wild. Seth had children of his own. June, older now, her hair silver, her hands worn from time, still lived in the same cabin. The ledger that once listed her like property had rotted in some courthouse archive. No one spoke of Wilkes. No one spoke of her father. But they spoke of her, the girl who was traded like cattle, the woman who stood in court and changed laws, the mother who raised her children with fierce love and quiet strength. And some nights, when the stars were bright and the trees still, June sat on the porch, closed her eyes, and felt the mountain hum beneath her feet. And in that hum, she felt Rook beside her again, not as a ghost, but as a memory built into every corner of the life they made. Moral: pain does not define us. The world can take everything from you, your name, your safety, your home, but it cannot take your will to rise again. Sometimes, healing doesn't begin with justice. It begins with being believed, being loved, being safe. June wasn't saved by the law. She wasn't rescued by chance. She was saved by choice, her own, and a man who saw her worth when no one else did. That's how new lives begin, not from running, but from rebuilding,